Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. All right, it looks like we've got everyone through the waiting room, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission's Fair Housing and Power Hour session on appraisal bias from impact to opportunity. Today, we are hosting our guest presenter, Andy Toy, Home Appraisal Bias Program Director at the City of Philadelphia. My name is Brittany Mellinger, and I'm the Director of Fair Housing and Commercial Property at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. So before I do a full introduction for our presenter, I'd like to share some logistical details and a little bit of background on PHRC's fair housing work. So first, I do want to let you know that this session is being recorded and that we will be sending out a link to the recording as well as slides from the presentation. Those will get sent out after the program today. I did place a statement in the chat there about the Wiretap Act. So it is against the law in Pennsylvania to record oral conversations without the permission of folks involved in most circumstances. And this session is being recorded for training and/or record-keeping purposes. By participating in this session, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of this session. At any time, if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to place that in the chat and we will respond to you as soon as possible. If you would like to ask your question or to comment verbally, please note that by doing so, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of your statements recorded as part of this session. And if you have any questions, please let us know. So I want to start off our time today by just providing a little bit of information about our housing work. So we all have the right to fair housing opportunities in Pennsylvania. Housing is so critical to all of the things that make for healthy lives and strong communities, from access to quality jobs and transportation to clean air and water and all of the amenities that we deserve in our communities. I do want to let you know this quick engagement acknowledgement that information, materials, and/or technical assistance are intended solely as informal guidance and are neither a determination of your legal rights or responsibilities under the PHRA and/or applicable federal laws, nor are binding on any agency with enforcement responsibilities under those same laws. So I'm not an attorney and I cannot give you any legal advice. If you are not familiar with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, we are the leading civil rights enforcement agency in Pennsylvania. We've been around since 1955, and we exist so that Pennsylvanians can live, work, and learn free from unlawful discrimination. So we do this through a two-part mission. We enforce Pennsylvania's non-discrimination laws, which include both the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act as well as the Pennsylvania Fair Educational Opportunities Act. We also work to promote equal opportunity for all in Pennsylvania. So we process complaints when folks believe that they've experienced housing discrimination. We investigate that to see if there was a violation of our state law, but we also offer proactive education through trainings and seminars and events like this one, through conferences, through the work of our civil rights outreach coordinator team and our advisory councils throughout the state. I want to provide just a brief overview of what our acts cover. So the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, in addition to housing, that also provides coverage for employment, commercial property, public accommodation, so the ability to access a public service or business, as well as primary and secondary education up through high school. The Pennsylvania Fair Educational Opportunities Act, that extends that coverage into post-secondary education, such as colleges, trade schools, and technical schools. In housing, we have the following protected classes. So groups of individuals that have protections against discrimination in their housing. So that includes race, color, national origin, ancestry, age 40 and above, familial status, sex, religion, disability, as well as the use, handling, or training of support animals for disability. And there's a wide range of discriminatory actions that could keep someone out of housing opportunities, anything from discriminatory statements to inquiries of someone seeking to rent or buy a house or get a mortgage, steering to a specific neighborhood, specific type of housing, refusal to sell, lease, or finance housing, unfair appraisals, which is going to be the focus of our discussion today, predatory lending practices, discriminating in housing terms and conditions, unequal provision of services and facilities, sexual harassment, and the refusal to provide reasonable accommodations and modifications to individuals with disabilities. And our fair housing laws are seeking to accomplish two goals. So ending housing discrimination, making sure that no one is kept out of housing opportunities because of discriminatory practices or policies, such as the ones that I just highlighted in the previous slide. But fair housing goes beyond that. It seeks to promote diverse, inclusive communities, and that's known as affirmatively furthering fair housing. So acknowledging that our country has a long history, and in the past we've had laws and practices and policies that have kept folks out of housing opportunities. So there's active work that we all need to be doing to make sure that everyone has equal access and opportunity to housing. All right, so if you've attended a Fair Housing and Power Hour session in the past, you'll know that the format is typically a PHRC staff person, such as myself, presenting on a specific fair housing topic, such as reasonable accommodations or familial status discrimination. This year, we're broadening the scope of the program. So in February, we released an updated version of PHRC's Fair Housing White Paper, The State of Fair Housing in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that really looks at access and opportunity to housing, making sure that folks have actual choice, protected choice, and enabled choice so that they can access the housing that they would like to live in, free from unlawful discrimination. So as we're looking to advance our goals of fair housing, we're taking a critical look at the real issues that keep folks from accessing housing from a fair housing lens. So how do our housing shortfalls and inadequacies impact individuals in protected classes, and what actions can we take to expand fair housing opportunities? So over the course of this year, we've been inviting a series of speakers to join us for our Fair Housing and Power Hour series to go into greater depth about groups of individuals at risk of discrimination, specific issues and concerns that can impact access and opportunity to housing. So we know that homeownership can be a powerful tool for stability and for building intergenerational wealth as the values of homes rise over time and as families build equity in their homes. A home is a key asset and can be used to secure a loan, to start a business, to pay for schooling, and to meet other household needs. But we know that many folks have experienced challenges in getting a fair valuation of their home's worth, and that this is an issue that impacts many homeowners of color throughout Pennsylvania. So I am very excited to welcome Andy Toy as our guest speaker to share about the challenges within the appraisal field and the City of Philadelphia's approach in taking action. Andy is the Home Appraisal Bias Program Director for the City of Philadelphia. In this role, Andy is working to undo systemic and unfair appraisal biases that undervalue Black and Brown homeowner properties. The undervaluing of properties rob owners of their wealth, which can be lost generationally, and the ability to use the equity in the property for borrowing or starting a small business. Andy is excited to be part of this important effort in the Parker administration. Andy was most recently the policy director for the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, whose mission is to work with CDCs to create an equitable city where every Philadelphian lives, works, and thrives in a neighborhood that offers an excellent quality of life. Andy previously served as the Community Development and Communications Director for CMAC, whose mission is to support and serve immigrants and refugees and other politically, socially, and economically marginalized communities as they seek to advance the condition of their lives in the United States. Andy led the conceptual plan for the Mifflin Square Park towards implementing $4.2 million in park improvements. Andy and his team also managed the Sophie South Philly East food truck immigrant chef incubator that connects community through food and culture. Before, Andy was the managing director of the now-built Chinatown Community Center Crane Project, a $77 million mixed-use community development. Andy's recognized as a thought leader and innovator when it comes to community and economic development, building a model commercial corridor initiative at the local initiative support corporation, supporting minority businesses as the director of the Retail Resource Network at the Enterprise Center. And before that, building Philadelphia's Brownfields program, bringing millions in new investments in quality job creating projects. Andy is currently the president of the Philadelphia Committee on City Policy and of the boards of the Union Benefit Foundation, the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, PIDC's Community Capital Advisory Board, as well as an active member of the AAPIP Philadelphia. Andy is a founder of the Philadelphia Public School Giving Circle and United Voices for Philadelphia, and was an appointee on the Philadelphia Zoning Code Commission. In 2006, Andy was selected as one of the top 101 connectors in Philadelphia, and in 2021, selected as a Pennsylvania 50 over 50 by City and State. Andy holds a BA in economics and a master's degree in public and urban policy, both from the University of Pennsylvania. In his spare time, he likes to listen to and create music, watch the Eagles win, eat and cook a variety of cuisines, and play with his grandkids. Welcome, Andy. We're glad to have you.
Thanks, Brittany. And the grandkids is probably the most important part of that whole thing at the very end. Most fun part, at least at this point. First of all, I want to thank Brittany and the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. They've been great partners of ours through this work of the appraisal bias program. And it's a work in progress. We're looking at systemic change, and that takes time and an ongoing effort. And my partner in this work, Parfine Muchimura, is with us somewhere. I think she's one of the boxes here. And by the way, if you feel like turning on your camera, I'm okay if you're wearing your pajamas. It's okay, really. You know, it's nice to see some faces if you want to. It doesn't. You don't have to, of course. But I can see Brittany at least. And again, thanks for your partnership and the work that we're doing together. But just preface this by saying, by the way, how many of you, if you want to give a thumbs up, are from Philly or the close to Philly area? How many of you aren't? All right. Don't see any thumbs up. Well, the point is that I think the work that we're doing is actually applicable across the state. In fact, some of our work that we're going to be talking about, that I'm going to talk about, is probably more important for people in rural areas of Pennsylvania. And it gets a little beyond the actual specifics of appraisal bias, but more into the whole system of appraising and what we need to do to improve it. So let me start sharing my screen. Okay, can you see that, Brittany? Is that?
Yep, looks good.
I'm good down. All right, great. So we're titling this From Impact to Opportunity, Appraisal Bias. And because we talk about impact, but then really there are opportunities for us to improve and to really grow the industry in a different way and a more diverse way. So, which has come out as we've done more and more of our digging deeper and deeper into the work. Oops, let's see.
Andy, I think you may have muted yourself.
Sorry about that. What is home appraisal bias? It's just a little background. It occurs when race, ethnicity, or neighborhood is a factor in lower appraisals. Sometimes it's explicit. Sometimes we actually have evidence of an explicit process or somebody's intent, but more often than not, it's implicit, and that's why it's very hard to prove sometimes. And probably more often than not, it goes unreported because you get a lower appraisal, you just live with it, right? But it's important for us to recognize and to educate people as to what their rights are if they feel like they've been unfairly treated. And really, the big impact is that it takes family wealth. People of color have less wealth to begin with, especially Black and brown folks that you know may have a home that has been in the family for a while, and then find out that don't really realize what the value of their home is and get undervalued and lose their equity. We also know that I worked in economic development for years, that your home is also a way to unlock capital for you to start a business, that kind of thing. When they ask for your collateral, if you have a home, it's important that that be valued properly. So, oops, what? And the goals of our appraisal bias program are to raise awareness, create pathways into the profession for underrepresented and local residents in Philadelphia, influence policy and regulatory changes, expand data collection and transparency, which is very important because if you can't prove you're making progress or there's an issue, then some people believe that it doesn't exist or pretend it doesn't. And ensure all residents, particularly Black and brown residents, receive fair valuations for their home and can utilize that value while building generational wealth. And we know there's a huge wealth gap in America, and it's worse in minority communities. So this all came about because our mayor, when she was a council person, finished a report in 2023 that looked at home appraisals. She had a task force that she convened, and they came up with a number of findings that home appraisal is a real thing, and data-wise, and we know anecdotally for sure. And then a number of recommendations that we're working on right now, Parfina, myself, and folks in the Office of Housing and Community Development. And then more recently, there have been studies and looks at appraisal bias because there's been some pushback from certain folks, in particular on the federal level, that it doesn't exist or it's not an issue. But we know it is, and we have evidence from the data that we can collect. Unfortunately, not all data is readily accessible, so it makes it harder. But even in November of the last year, the Reinvestment Fund, which is a local organization, a national organization that has local roots here, and Ira Goldstein is there. He's one of our great partners. They did an examination in Philadelphia. What they found, both in Philadelphia and nationally, is that housing appraisals, tend to be off at the low end for Black and brown homeowners more than for others. So percent of appraisals below contract price. In other words, like if I'm looking to get a home equity line of credit or loan for $100,000 and my appraisal comes in at 60, that is a gap. And it shows up more in minority populations. So there's a clear indication that something is amiss. And then the real anecdotal evidence is pretty clear that examples are out there. the Denver case, which is kind of interesting because African-American woman asked for an appraisal. She was working with Rocket Mortgage, actually, and they hired a company that was just not a good company. And instead of using comps from her neighborhood, they went to a different neighborhood a mile away because she happened to be Black, and they decided that they would go to a Black neighborhood instead of looking at the houses in her neighborhood. That is explicit, right? That's not even implicit. They were their license was revoked, but in the meantime, Rocket Mortgage, when she complained, canceled her application for her loan application. And in this case, because she was an attorney, they picked the wrong person to do it to. So, but think about all the times when things like this happen and nobody complains. It's just that's the way it is. They don't know their rights. So one of our goals is to make sure people understand their rights. The Baltimore case is kind of interesting because it just more recently settled last year. And what happened there is a trend, unfortunately, at the national level that there's a need to prove intent. So even if redlining happens, if you can't prove there was intention, then we're okay with that. And I assume people know what redlining is. It was a way to basically carve out communities of color from being able to get mortgages, and essentially devalued neighborhoods in that process. So in this case, the family, they brought a suit because they were just unhappy with how everything, the whole process went. And if you look at the details, the value of their property went up a lot when they essentially, folks may know this term, whitewashed their property. Is what they did was they had a different person meet with the appraiser, took off pictures on the walls, things like that, and got a much higher appraisal. But unfortunately, when they went to court, what happened was that they couldn't prove the case that there was intent, because it's hard to prove intent, right? And then we have a more local case. A woman in West Philadelphia got a second appraisal, did the whitewashing, and essentially got a much higher appraisal. So we know it happens. And so part of our goal is to eliminate that or limit that. And there are different ways to do that. One of the reasons why we think it happens to some extent is that the appraisal field is very undiverse. And also in the Philadelphia area, a lot of the appraisers coming from outside of Philadelphia. So they don't understand the neighborhoods. They're geographically and culturally less competent than we would have if we had more local people. And this is the case in Michigan. We use this because it's in a study. We actually did a little bit of the same thing and came up with the exact same information. Because people don't self-identify, you have to almost like go to names and addresses to figure out, to estimate. So this is sort of an estimation of ethnicity and gender by name. We're in exactly the same place in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So how are we responding? And by the way, our response can be anywhere. So if you're in Erie, Pennsylvania, you're in Pittsburgh, you're in Lancaster, the same kind of things can happen. So we are looking at making sure we have data, we have access to data. Unfortunately, at the federal level, we don't have that yet as much as we'd like. The new 21st Century Road to Housing has some recommendations, or actually not recommendations, but some language in there that there is a study that needs to happen, and then some recommendations as to how we can access the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac kind of information. That's where the majority of all mortgages go through to the federal through that process. So they actually get all the data on each of the appraisals. We can't get that very easily. It's not like your home sale. It's not readily available on the internet. But we would like to make it more transparent, because we believe that that will also cut down on people being sloppy, or at best, or at worst, having intent. We're getting the word out, educating homeowners through our counseling agencies, our NACs or CDCs, our website. We're having workshops. Our first workshop with a group called the Wealth Collective, which is a great partner, just coming on as a consultant for us, is on Saturday. So we're going to be reaching out to communities across the city to make sure people know what their rights are. And then what do they do? Who do they talk to? Their housing counselors and then beyond. And what recourse do they have? Which one of them is reconsideration of value, which I can explain if anybody wants to know a little bit more about how that might work. And we're still learning about the ways in which we can address the issues. Creating more pathways. So this is where statewide we're kind of in alignment. There are these new models out there because the traditional supervisor trainee model has not worked well over the years. In fact, the industry has been shrinking close to 50% since 2007, and expected to continue in Pennsylvania to shrink at least 5% this year. And that's partly because of the supervisor trainee model is one which you have to almost know somebody to get into the field. It's a lot like the building trades in Philadelphia, where if you're not somebody's nephew, you might not ever be able to get into the trade, and it's really hard. You have to find somebody. It's a relationship driven. The new Perea and Practicum models actually allow people to just go through either online. Perea is an completely online program, and people who have come through that in other places have done very well, like 100% pass rate on the test. So there's a test at the end of to become a licensed or certified appraiser. And then the practicum model is more like a classroom model that we are going to be testing out with our partners at Temple University in Philadelphia, and maybe other places in Pennsylvania. It is not in Pennsylvania yet, and we're pushing that to happen here because we know that the supervisor trainee model is flawed. It's a good model for some people, but if you think about it, if the industry keeps shrinking, we lose all the supervisors as well. And a supervisor can only train up to 3 people per year if they want to. Many of them don't want to because it's work, and you're essentially having to spend a lot of time in the beginning. That's not making you money; it's actually losing you money. So as that sort of spirals downward, we want these new models to happen, and we're pushing that. And we're working very closely with, in Philadelphia at least, 4 universities: Temple, Community College, Lincoln, and Cheney, and then our high schools. Although high schools, there is an issue with that. Currently, you need to have a college degree or something very close to a finished degree with the coursework to become an appraiser. In the future, that won't be the case because the national organization, the Appraisal Qualifications Board, realizes that this has been a real way to keep people out of the field. You do need to have analytical skills, but college degree maybe not, and maybe you can get into the field a lot quicker and for a lot less money if you didn't have to go through college first. There is a cost to getting into the field as well. So we're working with a lot of partners, and we're working on trying to pull together some scholarship money so that we can pay for some of the cost of the training. So a Perea, for example, is around $15,000 right now, and it's at least a year for a certified appraiser. So how do we make it a little bit easier? Not easier, not lower the standards, but make it possible for more people to get in that could be qualified. One is to help with some scholarship money. Maybe instead of 15,000, if it's 7,500, that makes it possible for some people because essentially you have to work while you're taking these courses. Perea, you can do it at night. Take somebody with a lot of will to want to do that. So we want to help it make it easier. And we're trying to pull together some funding from various sources. So here's the problem in a nutshell in Philadelphia. We have 65 appraisers, certified appraisers in Philadelphia. And you can see that there were way more people outside of the city. Many in Pennsylvania, but we also have a lot in New Jersey. They're coming from Delaware. This is 100 miles. They're even further away in New York, because the way this industry is set up, it allows reciprocation, which means if you're certified in New Jersey, you can come across the border, which is fine, except we know that people that are like in Cherry Hill might not understand what neighborhoods are like in North Philadelphia. Culturally, they may have issues, but also even understanding as they're doing the comps, comparables, they may not know which neighborhood is comparable because in Philadelphia, neighborhoods change every 4 blocks. For those of you who know Philadelphia. And then we looked at the state. Oh, by the way, this is our GIS guy here. Sean did a fantastic job of mapping these from the national database. And we see that there are what I call appraisal deserts out there. They're very light colored counties. There are 7 counties without any certified appraisers, which means if you're trying to get an appraisal for a home to sell, or even to do a refinance or a home equity loan, you're going to have to go outside of your county and find somebody that is maybe not familiar with your county, and they're going to charge you more too, by the way. So you're going to have to pay more for an appraisal out there for the travel costs and the fact that you don't have any choice. You have like a choice of 1 or 2 people. So it's absolutely worse in rural PA. So we have folks that should be allied with us to make sure that we can grow this industry. And if you think about it, if you're in one of the counties with 0 appraisers and you want to become an appraiser in the old, supervisor trainee model, you're going to have to leave your county. You're going to have to go somewhere to find somebody, which is not always convenient. And who knows if you're going to come back, actually. So it is a workforce development question, and it's also, for a community issue that losing people. And then we looked at Philadelphia just as an example of like drilling down into the 65 appraisers in Philadelphia. And even within the city, we see an uneven distribution. And these are by like their mailing addresses. So it's not 100% accurate, but I can bet that there are no appraisers living in the green areas. The Hispanic neighborhoods, majority neighborhoods of Philadelphia, there are 0. The like brownish orange areas are majority Black. There's only a handful. So we know we can do better because the belief is that if somebody's from the neighborhood, they understand the values of having a rec center or a library or, a strong neighborhood organization. As they're doing the appraisal, they will take all those things into account. And if you can't speak the language and you're going into somebody's house and they can't tell you about, the new park that was just built down the street, you're not going to get that, and you're not going to know about that, and inadvertently may devalue their property. So cultural and geographic competence are really key. And it is an opportunity though for folks to find jobs, and these are. So for those of you who don't know, appraising is a pretty good industry, has been. People can make six figures. So these are not like low level paying jobs. These are really good paying jobs, careers, I should say. So we're doing we have two more slides here. One is three more slides actually. The valuation lab. We're doing an outreach into the community to show that allow people to understand what their rights are and what to look for in their appraisal. At the same time, so this is coming up on Saturday, which is exciting with our partners. And then everybody's welcome to come if you're close to Philadelphia this Saturday. We can send you that information. This is in West Philadelphia on 52nd Street. Chase has a bank there. But more on our end is actually we are having a appraiser and assessor career exploration expo on Wednesday, October 28th. You all are welcome to come. This is a chance for people to hear about what those careers look like. We also are looking for assessors in Philadelphia, and they are not the same thing, but they're very similar in the skills that you would need. The assessor is the one that deals with your taxes and your value of your house for taxes. And I always say you want a high appraisal and a low assessment. If you're a homeowner, that's the best scenario. Unfortunately, we get the opposite more of the time, that people are over assessed and under appraised, which means you're paying higher amounts of taxes in your neighborhood, but you're not getting the value out of your home. So that's a double bad. And we expect a whole bunch of appraisers to come to this. So there's a chance to meet some people who have gone through the field. And Parfine and I are working on, Parfine has actually been doing some interviews with some folks, some appraisers. So we get a chance to see what it looks like out there. A day in the life, we're calling it. We'll have that on video, and that'll be on our website as well. So that's really a lot of the work that we're doing. It is systemic, I feel. So as we build pathways for a more diverse group and more local appraisers, we think that will help to alleviate some of that, but also we need to make sure people understand their rights and know what to look for and know where to go when they have an issue. And that's my presentation. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andy. That was a really, really informative presentation. It was really great to learn more about the efforts that you're working on. I'm not seeing any specific questions in the chat right now. Oh, I take that back. I see we've got a question. Can this type of expo be available in other areas of the state, looking specifically at the Pittsburgh region?
It would take somebody to do that. We're not going out to Pittsburgh, unfortunately for you, or unfortunately for us. I like Pittsburgh. I would go, but our focus is Philadelphia. But yeah, we should. You actually, the interesting thing is the head of the appraisal board in Pennsylvania is from Pittsburgh area, and we would encourage. And in fact, actually, I should take this back a little bit because the secretary of the appraisal board, and that's the governing body of appraisers in Pennsylvania. She is working on an outreach approach. They're going to start in Philly, but they want to do some similar outreach in other parts of the state, working with some of the schools. So, for example, University of Pittsburgh might be a good partner in that. I don't know folks out there, so I can't really tell you who would be the best partner, but yes, somebody should be doing that out there.
Yeah, it would be really great to replicate the amazing work that you're doing in Philly and other areas of the state that need it equally as much.
Yeah, we're happy to share what we learn and what we're doing. Again, even to the point of our partnership with Temple University, hoping to build a practicum model, which um, is a little complicated to get off the ground. But once it's off the ground, we hope that will be something that folks in Philadelphia can take advantage of, but also people that could happen in other places. Where are people from? Anybody from? So we have people from Pittsburgh and other places across the state. Do
Yeah,
you feel
folks,
like
feel,
you would have
feel free to
a?
put stuff in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from.
Yeah. Does anybody feel like they have these similar issues in their places? Harrisburg, York. Yeah. Um, my guess is that it's Reading. Yeah. My guess is that it happens in other places and it's not being addressed. So, um, part of it is just knowledge and educating people.
I see a
Um,
question in the chat. Has it been considered to have a home appraisal conducted by local governments rather than private owners where the appraisals can be monitored?
yeah, and Parfine answered that. We're
Okay.
thinking about it right now in Philadelphia. So there are these, I didn't get into this, but there are things, another part of the systemic problem that we have. There are organizations called AMC, appraisal management companies, and they're sort of like the go-between between lenders and appraisers, because in 2007, when the big crash happened, um, the federal government said you need to have an arm's length between the appraisers and the lenders, because they were basically going the opposite way. They were just giving people high appraisals just so they could make more loans. And then after the crash happened, um, it became an issue. There are companies that act as go-betweens. And the problem with those AMCs, one of the problems is many of them are national. So they don't know our local conditions at all. So they're just picking people out of a hat, more or less. So if you're on their list and you're in Delaware and they're doing an appraisal in Philadelphia and they want the lowest price possible, they'll just pick you, um, even if you're not the best appraiser for that location. So we've got to do a little more work on that. And even the appraisal industry, I'll just say this, the appraisal industry, many appraisers don't like the AMCs, honestly. And because there's also this lack of transparency, when you get your estimation of costs for your loan, all you see is the appraisal, and it could say $500, but you don't know how much of that's actually going to the actual appraiser and how much is going to the appraisal management company. So one of the things that's been that is being lobbied for by the appraisers is to have that show up there so people have full information. Oh, so Washington County does not have a lack of appraisers. That's good if that's your belief. Um, are they diverse, or do they represent the communities they work in? That's one question. The barriers to entry is a great question. So I would answer that traditionally. The barrier to entry was partly because they want to keep their prices high. So, supply and demand. But it's gotten to the point where actually the number of appraisers just is overrun by the number of appraisal needs. So even the industry itself has recognized this, because maybe 30 years ago they would never be talking about we need to open up the industry to other ways to get in. But it's a real conversation now at the very top levels of the Appraisal Foundation, which is the organization that sort of oversees all of the appraisal work at the national level. And some of these barriers are, I wouldn't call them barriers, but you have to want to make sure that people are qualified and can do the work. So it's not, it's not just anybody can just jump in and do this. So there is a process, and all the 1,500 hours is supposed to get you there to know that you've seen enough that you can be a good appraiser. But yeah, I think partly because they professionalized and partly because they wanted to keep it smaller initially. And the good news is that we're all sort of speaking in the same direction here, that we need more people, and they aren't against diversity, at least at the national level. And even honestly, we've talked to local appraisers who said, yeah, I would take on a trainee, but I don't, how do I know, how do I connect? So part of our goal on the 28th is to have people that are interested meet with appraisers so that we can actually create those relationships. Yeah. Yeah, too many retiring people, and then now we see that the system is dysfunctional in a way. It's been working, I guess, for some people, but not for the majority.
There's also a question about the best training program, in your opinion. Do you have any insights on that?
And Parfine, please weigh in if you would. I think, the one that's gotten people through actually to the test. So there's a test of your competence at the end. It's a written test. But the PARIA online training has seemed to have worked for a lot of people. But my question has been, like, what happens at the end when you want to go out in the field? Do you have an understanding of how to deal with the homeowner? What is it like to actually measure out a room? How do you deal with all those pieces? If somebody speaks a different language, what are you going to do? I think the interesting thing is the newest regulations coming online this year are going to allow people to take portions of the different trainings together and just add them up. And if you need 1,500 hours, you could have 750 of PARIA. So that will cost you less at that point. And then you could go and work for a supervisor for the next 750 and get that kind of training. I would think that might be the best, because you're getting some of the book learning that makes you a better prospect for the supervisor to hire you, even though you're not, you still have a lot to learn maybe, but you're bringing something to the table. And then you're learning all the ins and outs, going to somebody's home, dealing with all the actual physical side of things. So, yeah, Parfine is saying there are pros and cons to each approach. Our goal is to help people just to get through the process as quickly as possible and to be trained in a really smart and also ethical way, because there are also courses on making sure that fair housing is part of it, and appraisal bias is not something that should appear as you're looking at somebody's house. Stand out items that allow you to categorize, recognize a sloppy appraisal job. That's a great question. I'm not an appraiser, so I would leave that up to the Wealth Collective is actually helping us so we are actually hopefully using they just came up with they're working on an app to look at the appraisal and basically red flag some things that maybe don't look right on an appraisal. So that's kind of the standout items might be that the comps don't look like they're from the neighborhood, for example. And then the adding and subtracting value for conditions, that's a tricky one because sometimes people think about, was the home dirty or was there an issue with the neighborhood that they thought, but it could be just somebody's opinion. So those kind of things become kind of gray, and that's where we get implicit bias.
Yeah, if I could add on briefly, if someone believes that they think there may have been discrimination in their appraisal, if they think there may be issues, please reach out to the PHRC. You can file a complaint with our agency, and we can investigate to see if there were issues with that appraisal. There's also local fair housing organizations with specialized expertise that can talk with folks. So there's lots of resources out there.
Yeah, there's a few different ways to sort of report it. Parfine, do you want to put in the chat? We have on our website, there is a place where you can ask questions and lodge a complaint and then we will try to help you to look into it more deeply. We would need to get a copy of the appraisal, and then we're at the beginning of this whole process. We're trying to use the app though to help us to as a first cut at it. So sometimes people think they have a low appraisal, but it's actually fine. And our hope would be to help people to know that. Or if you have a higher appraisal, you're not going to be complaining, I hope, but if your appraisal is right on, we will let you know that we don't think there's a problem because the app didn't come back with any red flags. And we also have appraisers as partners that we could also use to take a look. Yeah. So if you're not in Philadelphia, you would probably go to Brittany's that link, right, Brittany?
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if you're in Philadelphia, you're welcome to use that, but you could probably send it to a couple different places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll make sure to include all of these links and this fantastic information. So thank you, Parfine, for putting the links in there. I'll make sure to have this in our wrap-up email with the recording and the slides, so that way everyone has these as well.
So I hope this is all helpful. My one ask of everybody here, if you are, since you're all out, most of you are from outside Philadelphia, which is good, look into what your appraiser industry looks like. The folks on the ground in your municipality or county, because we need help from rural areas to say, hey, we're also short a number of appraisers. We could use, one of the things that we can use is a licensed category, which would make the bar much lower as an entryway. I shouldn't say the bar is lower. It's just, it allows more people to get in without having to go to the next level. And honestly, Pennsylvania is one of like 7-8 places that has a higher bar of states. The rest of the states and territories do have licensed appraisers as a category, and it doesn't seem like it's been a problem for any of them. So we've been trying to tell our appraisal board that that's important, but the appraisal board actually just has to listen to the legislature. So if a state senator says, I want to change this and introduces a bill, that is what we could use. We've been trying to amend an existing bill, actually help use that as a way, but it hasn't happened yet. So in your municipality, if you see that need, talk to your elected officials and say, we need this. And the problem is, it's even if we start today, even if it's going to take us months and months to get there. And then once we have that, it still takes a year for somebody or 9 months for somebody to get through the process to get their license. So this is why systemic change is hard. We're like thinking, unfortunately, a year or two ahead. What we do today is not going to change anything right away. It will take a little while to filter down, but the hope is that we do change. I mean, the sooner we change now, the sooner we'll have that opportunity for people, and it is a great opportunity. So some of you might be interested. Yeah,
Well,
Preston. Yeah, exactly. So right now, lower appraisal values, higher interest rates. Right now, there's also a lack of sales. That's one of the major ways appraisers get business. That's not the only way, by the way. We hear about other opportunities, but when that happens, when that dam breaks, and we start seeing a lot of sales, who's going to be doing that work? If it takes you a year or more to become an appraiser, you're not ready day one. Or I should say, we're not ready. We won't be ready. And in fact, in rural areas, it's going to be much worse. Oh my God. I'm, oh wow. I have no, 101 to 100 recent vote for White House. What? I don't know about that, but it sounds terrible, whatever it is. We're not talking about the White House, right? We're talking about white housing. Is that place where they think they can set up a community? Do you want to explain that, Tijuana? Yeah. This might be something Brittany has to address. HB 2103. I'm not familiar with that. Parfine, what do you know about that? Or Tijuana? Sorry. I can't answer that, but I don't know anything about it. That's wild, though.
yeah, it looks like that's a piece of pending legislation, so you can definitely get some more information on that, and certainly a space for local advocacy with your elected officials.
I can speak a little bit to it because PHRC has assisted with Representative Ben Waxman to propose kind of counter legislation that would close loopholes in the PHRA that might allow this type of housing. So I know that there is other housing in the housing bills in the works to prevent these loopholes from happening. But this is based off of a situation that arose in, I believe, Arkansas, where a community, a whites only community was allowed to exist.
Yeah, every time we think we're taking a step forward, we keep going backwards. It's crazy. Preston Moore wants to talk. Can you unmute, or is that?
Yeah, Preston, I've allowed your mic. So if you want to make some brief comments before we close out, you are welcome to do so. It's looking like Preston's mic is on, but I'm not hearing any audio. So we'll give a second for him to see if we can work out those audio issues, or please feel free to put your comments in the chat as well. But while working on that, I just want to take a moment to thank Andy for this fantastic, informative presentation. That this multi-pronged work that you're doing in community education, in policy advocacy, in terms of recruitment into the industry. It's been really informative to see all of these aspects of this complicated issue, and really appreciate the work that you and Parfine are doing on this. And I'd also like to thank everyone that attended this afternoon for your participation, for your great questions. I want to let you know that we will have our next Fair Housing and Power Hour session in August, on August 26th. We're going to be welcoming Dr. Julie Wilson from Common Roots in Meadville, Pennsylvania, to be talking about community land trusts through do-it-yourself housing. So that's going to be another excellent session. So I encourage all of you to join us back next month for a Fair Housing and Power Hour. Let me pause one moment. Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Thank you, Britt. I was just going to say thank you, Brittany, and everybody here for your interest. And Parfine and I are appreciative of your input and time involved in supporting our work here in Philadelphia. And anything that we can do to be a model for other places, we're happy to be that, for sure.
All right, I want to loop back to Preston to see if you were able to resolve your audio issues. Well, Preston, please feel free to follow up with me via email, and we can address any comments or questions that you have. So thank you again, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.